All right, today we're going to crack open a really fascinating medical mystery, one that touches thousands of families every single year: congenital heart disease. For decades, the reason behind most cases was a complete black box. But now, thanks to some absolutely incredible genetic technology, scientists are finally starting to find the clues they need. So let's start with just how big this problem really is. I want you to just look at this number for a second. 1 in 100. It seems simple, right? But behind that simple statistic is a huge story that affects families all over the world. So, what exactly does it stand for? It means that about 1% of all babies, that's 1 out of every 100 births, are born with some kind of structural problem in their heart. That makes congenital heart disease, or CHD, the most common birth defect there is, by far. And for the longest time, it has been one of medicine's absolute biggest puzzles. We've gotten really, really good at treating it. But figuring out why it happens in the first place? Well, that's been a much tougher nut to crack. So just to be super clear, CHD isn't something that shows up later in life. It's a problem with how the heart or its big blood vessels were built right from the get-go, when a baby is developing. And this can be anything from a tiny little hole between chambers to really complex, life-threatening issues. And this is where we hit this incredible paradox. I mean, on one hand, it's a massive success story. Modern medicine and surgery are so good that most kids born with CHD now live long into adulthood. But here's the flip side. For more than half of them, we still can't point to a specific reason why their heart didn't form correctly. It's just this giant question mark. So, to solve this mystery, scientists basically had to become genetic detectives. And the first clues they found were, let's say, the big, obvious culprits, major errors in the genetic code that were pretty easy to spot with the tools they had back then. These were the first-round suspects. You had things like aneuploidy, that's having a whole extra or missing chromosome, like in trisomy 21, which causes Down syndrome. Then you have these big chunks of DNA called copy number variations, or CNVs, where a huge piece is just gone, or it's been duplicated. A classic example is what causes DiGeorge syndrome. And finally, you have these rare single-gene typos that you can clearly see get passed down through a family. But here's the thing. Look at this. Even when you add all of those known causes together, they only explain about a third of all cases. You really see the scale of the mystery when you realize that the biggest slice of this pie, a whopping 65%, was still just labeled unknown. So where on earth were the other clues hiding? Well, the investigation was about to get a massive, massive upgrade. A true technological revolution gave our genetic detectives an incredibly powerful new toolkit, one that let them search for clues that were completely invisible before. This new tool was next-generation sequencing. All of a sudden, instead of just looking for huge missing pieces of DNA, scientists could read a person's entire genetic code, letter by letter, super fast and pretty cheaply. It was like going from a blurry old telescope to the Hubble Space Telescope. The detail was just astounding. And this powerful new magnifying glass let them spot something totally fascinating: de novo mutations. These are brand new genetic typos. They aren't passed down from either parent. They just happen, spontaneously, in the egg or the sperm. This was a huge aha moment, because it could finally explain why so many kids with severe CHD are born into families that have zero history of heart problems. So how do they find them? Well, the logic is actually beautiful in its simplicity. Scientists sequence the DNA of the child and both parents. It's called trio sequencing. Then they just compare all three. Any genetic difference that pops up in the child but isn't in either parent, well, that has to be a de novo mutation. It's basically a high-tech game of spot the difference. And when researchers did this for thousands of families, they got a massive piece of the puzzle. It turns out that these spontaneous de novo mutations account for about 10% of all severe congenital heart disease. Just like that, another big chunk of that unknown pie was finally filled in. And it gets even more interesting. When you look at kids who have CHD and other issues, like a neurodevelopmental disability, the chance of finding a de novo mutation jumps to over 20%. This tells us that there are some really powerful genes out there that are crucial for building both the heart and the brain correctly. But the story doesn't end there, not even close. After solving that part of the puzzle, scientists turn their attention to the vast, mysterious parts of our DNA that don't actually make up genes, what some people have called the dark matter of the genome. Here's a really great way to think about it. Only about 2% of your DNA is coding, meaning it contains the direct recipes for building proteins. Think of these as the ingredients in a cookbook. The other 98% is non-coding. Now, for a long time, people called it junk DNA, but we now know it contains the instructions. It's the part of the recipe that says when to add the ingredients, how much to use, and when to turn the oven on or off.
And it's just staggering when you see it visually. The vast majority of our DNA isn't the ingredients themselves, but the incredibly complex system that controls them. And for something as complicated as building a human heart, getting those instructions perfectly right is absolutely critical.
And this was the latest jaw-dropping discovery. They found that the problem might not be a faulty ingredient at all. You can have a perfectly healthy gene, but if there's a tiny typo in the non-coding instruction manual, it might tell that gene to switch on at the wrong time or in the wrong cells during development, and the result can be a major heart defect.
Okay, so we've been on this amazing scientific detective story. But why does solving this mystery actually matter for patients and for their families? I mean, this is about so much more than just satisfying scientific curiosity. You see, getting a genetic diagnosis isn't just an answer to the question, why? It is a powerful tool. It's a roadmap for a patient's future, and it can completely change how their doctors manage their health for their entire life. Think about it. Finding that specific genetic cause lets doctors give families a much more accurate idea of the risk for future pregnancies. It helps them watch out for other health problems that might be linked to that same gene. It guides the patient's long-term care. It helps adult survivors make decisions about having their own families. And, really importantly, it's the first step toward developing future therapies that could one day target these problems at their genetic source. And that leads us to the final and maybe the most profound question of all. We've made unbelievable progress in treating CHD after a baby is born. But as our understanding of this complete genetic map gets better and better, the ultimate goal starts to come into focus. Could we one day understand this process so well that we can move beyond just treatment and into the world of true prevention? It's still a ways off, for sure, but for the very first time, it's a future we can actually imagine. And that hope is what drives this incredible research forward. Thanks for joining me.